What is going on today, everybody? It's Buddy, and in this video I'm going to show you guys how I took this beat up and rusted, neglected F-150 and turned it into thousands of dollars of profit. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Buddy and I buy and sell cars for a living full time and make videos on doing it. Right now I'm going to go over the full car flipping process on this Ford F-150 and how much I knew I should buy it for, how much I knew I could sell it for, how much money I had to put into it, and ultimately how much money I made. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video. So I was getting ready for bed when I got a notification on the SWOOPA app alerting me of a new listing on Marketplace. It was a 2012 Ford F-150 FX4 with 120,000 miles for only $7,900. Now, I know from experience that there's no reason this should be under $10,000 unless there's something wrong with it, of course. So it definitely piqued my interest. So let's take a look at the ad and see what's going on with this truck. Now, unfortunately, there's only two pictures of this truck. The first one was a far shot of the side of the truck. Can't really see any details or any damage or if there's any curb rash on the rims or anything. Now, the next picture was an interior shot. The one thing that sticks out for me here is that one of the seat covers, or actually there's two seat covers here, and for any car over 100,000 miles that has seat covers on them, I can almost guarantee is because they're ripped up. So now it's time to check out the description and see if there's any more details I can find out about this truck. All it said was runs and drives good. Now that really doesn't tell me much about the truck. At least it starts and moves from the description, but there's been plenty of times a seller has told me that a car runs great and it ends up having mechanical issues when I get there. So I'm not going to take his word for it. Now this ad is super vague. It only has two pictures and a super simple description. Clearly this guy isn't great at making car listings. So let's do a quick check on the potential value of this truck and see where it's at. Now after plugging all the info in online, it seems like it's coming back with a trade-in value of about $9,000. Now that $9,000 is kind of what you can get at like a dealership. If you were to trade it in, they'd probably give you a little lower, or a private party sale. This puts this truck at $13,000. Now these values here are for vehicles in good condition with no major damage or mechanical issues. Now this listing is only at $7,900, so there's already a nice healthy profit margin on this truck. That is if it's in good shape, of course. So I'm definitely interested in seeing this truck. So the next steps is to message the seller, schedule a time to see the truck. There's no point in negotiating over messages, especially if you live close to the seller. Now, while we're on the way to see the car, there's some things that you always need to bring with you, and one of those things is an OBD reader. I'll have a link to 3 OBD readers in the description at 3 different price points that you guys can go ahead and check out. Now, I've been buying and selling cars for years, and I think probably the most important thing for getting profitable flips is to get to the ads first. It's guaranteed that any car on Marketplace underpriced by a few $1,000s will be pending in literally minutes. So a tool I personally use for car dealers and pro flippers is an app called SWOOPA. It also shows you the estimated value of the car in the feed, so you can see at a glance if the price is a good deal, a bad deal, or even a steal. So they now have new AI filters that let you set your bot to only show underpriced cars and block obvious bad deals to save you a ton of time. You can use their AI evaluation tool to quickly check if a deal is worth it. It breaks down any issues and shows a potential profit margin. It even gives you strategy tips too. Now once you've set up your bot, SWOOPA does the rest for you, searching Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, Craigslist, and you can filter results by mileage, year, make, model, or just use the AI price filter and only see underpriced cars with a healthy profit margin. SWOOPA will continuously search Marketplace every minute and ping you with an alert when a deal is underpriced, and then you can message the seller first before the other 50 flippers in your areas hit them up. So you can either scroll on Marketplace all day or get notified instantly with the SWOOPA app. It costs money to use, but it's easily worth it, and you'll make that investment back tenfold. This app's not just for cars, it works for iPhones, couches, camera gear, pretty much anything you can flip and make a side hustle or a business out of. This is hands down the best company I've ever promoted. It's built by flippers for flippers. There's a link in the description, so go get the free trial and check it out. So after about 15 minutes of driving, we finally arrived here at the seller's house. So the first look at the truck was actually in decent condition. It looks really nice with these aftermarket rims. I was super happy about the condition of the paint. It was in pretty good condition. It did have some hazing and fading, and the clear coat did seem to be in good shape besides the little bit of hazing, but with a nice solid buff and some rubbing compound, I think I can get this black paint looking really good again. Now taking a look at the front of the truck, the headlights also had a lot of hazing. It really aged this little F-150 here a little bit, but good thing I'm a pro at restoring headlights. Now, if I come in a little closer, you can see this trim here around the wheels is pretty faded, also aging this truck's exterior even more. It seems like this thing has been getting beat up by the sun for a little bit, but that's not too crazy for a 14-year-old truck. Now, if we swing around the back, we come into a problem that's not a super easy fix like the other ones. This tailgate is rusted out bad. This is kind of a common issue with some of these trucks. These tailgates are hollow, and the rain water will get trapped inside and it'll rust them from the inside out. This is not just some super easy patchwork. If I wanted to fix this thing, I would need to replace the whole tailgate. Now, there was some minor scuffs and scratches here on the body of this truck, like one here on the corner. Again, nothing that's really out of the ordinary for a 2012 vehicle, but if you were to pop open the tailgate, you can see there's a lot of deep scratches here on the bed of this truck. There's some rust forming, and I definitely would need to get that patched up to make sure the rust doesn't get too out of hand. So now let's take a look at the interior and see what we got. After peeling up these seat covers, my suspicion was correct. Both the driver and passenger front seats were all ripped up. Like I said, 9 times out of 10 when someone has seat covers on an older vehicle, it's to hide those busted up, ripped up seats. But other than the busted up seats, the interior seemed to be fine. The window and seat controls all worked good. There was no broken or cracked pieces on the dashboard. It also had a nice aftermarket touchscreen radio, which seemed to be working great, so that was a plus. It was pretty dirty, definitely used a good detail, but that's really about it. So now it's time for the most important part, and that is the test drive. So I put the key in the ignition and it started right up with no issues at all. That's also good news, but there was some bad news. The AC blew out hot air. Even though I could hear the compressor kicked on when I hit the AC button, it still blew really hot air. And here in Florida, AC is a must. So with the AC compressor kicking on, I knew it just had like a Freon leak. Hopefully it wasn't too bad, but that's to be determined. So the next thing I did, I took this thing out for a spin around the block to make sure it drove good. And to my pleasant surprise, it drove great. There was no pulling in either direction. It didn't have any weird road noises or anything. The brakes worked perfect. It shifted beautiful. Everything seemed really nice while driving this truck. So at this point, I really did want this truck. I knew there was a healthy profit margin if I got it for the right price. And with a sale price around $13,000, even if I got this thing at $7,900, I still think I can make a little money. But of course, I'm going to go lower than the asking price, $7,900. So when I got back to the house after the test drive, I told the seller this. So when I initially looked at the ad that you posted, I didn't see anything about the AC not work. I also didn't see any mention of rust, and we both know that tailgate is rusted out bad. There also wasn't any mention of the seats being ripped up. So honestly, considering all that, I thought this truck was in better condition. I think I'm gonna have to pass on it. So after I said that I'm gonna pass, I kind of stopped. I looked at the truck for a little bit and I kind of shook my head and I was like, reasonably, man, what do you think you would actually take for this? Almost like I was gonna change my mind. And I kid you not, he went down $1,000 right away to $6,900. I looked at him, I said, make it $6,500, bro, and I got you a deal. He didn't really give me much friction since I already kind of prepped him to know that I'm willing to pass up on the truck and walk away. So honestly, when you're selling a vehicle and you got someone there with cash, it's hard to say no, especially if you want to get rid of this thing. And we both agreed on a sale price of $6,500. We shook hands. The truck is now officially mine. It's time to get this thing back to my house and get it sale ready, fixed up, and ready for its new home. Now, while we're on the way, I want to mention the topic of negotiation. A tactic that I regularly use is telling the seller that I'm going to pass and not buy the car, and then I do ask them to reconsider it and give me a lower price just to kind of sweeten the deal for me so I don't walk away. This kind of sets the pace in the negotiation process, letting them know if they don't considerably lower the price that they just wasted their time, they wasted my time, and they're gonna have to do all this over again with another potential buyer. So I have 19 other car flipping videos and all of them touch a little bit on negotiation, and it's definitely worth going back and watching all of those because I try and touch on a different lesson in negotiation in every single one of my car flipping videos. So after about a 15-minute drive home, we finally arrived back at my house. It's time to get this thing fixed up and sale ready. So you guys know how I like to do it. I made a full checklist of everything that needs to be done, and let's start here with the AC because it's getting crazy hot here in the summer in Florida, and I don't want to drive this thing again without any AC. So like I said, I heard the AC compressor kick on when I pressed the AC button at the seller's house, but it still blew hot air. So I hooked up my manifold gauges on the truck, and I noticed the level was way low. So I know the leak is super small since it wasn't completely empty. If it was a bigger leak or it was like a big failing AC part, it would be completely empty, but it was just a little bit low, so I was hoping the stop leak could seal the system back up. It was just an O-ring. So I topped up the system with some AC Freon and some stop leak, and thank goodness after a week it still blew ice cold. The levels didn't move. I didn't have to replace any parts like I assumed I would have to. Stop leak is kind of my first go-to, but I was super happy that this thing was still blowing cold. Even after a few weeks, it was still ice cold. So we can cross off fixing the AC off this thing and move on, and let's get this exterior all fixed up and looking mint again. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to start our money invested chart. So we're going to keep track of how much money we have invested in this project so we can see how much money we're going to make ultimately. So we have $6,500 for the price of the truck, and then we have $15 for the can of Freon with stop leak. So now let's jump back to painting the trim. So you can clearly see the trim along the wheel wells is looking pretty faded. What we're going to do is we're going to start by taping off the upper edge of the trim and covering it with film and taping it up at least a foot so we don't get spray all over the paint of the truck. So after everything is masked off here like you see I did, I want to make sure the surface is completely clean. So I wipe down the entire piece piece of trim with a rag and some rubbing alcohol. This is a super important step in painting almost anything, whether it's trim or body panels or anything. It won't adhere or come out smooth if you don't have a nice clean surface to paint on. So once the alcohol evaporates, which only takes like 30 seconds, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover up the tire with a painting cloth so I don't get any overspray on the wheel either. Now once everything is cleaned up, masked off, and covered, it's time to start and lay down a light coat of some primer. The primer is going to help the paint adhere to the trim, and it's always a good idea to use primer before you paint really anything, especially trim. Now after a few minutes the primer is all dry, it's time to lay down some paint. Now since I ran out of my usual trim and bumper paint at the local Home Depot, it's sold out completely unfortunately, I'm going to use this Rust-Oleum paint, which I have tested and it holds up really good on trim before. It's a satin finish, so it's not going to come out like a flat looking, but it's also not a super shiny high gloss either. It's kind of nice in between and gives the trim a really nice factory look. And trust me, this method of painting your trim is going to last so much longer than any trim restoration product you're going to buy from the store. I guarantee that. So I'm going to repeat the steps on the other 3 wheel wells, let it dry for a few hours, and once it's all dry, I'm going to carefully take off all the masking and all the tape, and you can see here once it's done, the trim looks brand new. There is no more of that faded ugly color. It gives it a nice uniform look, and it's so much nicer. So let's go ahead and cross off painting the trim off the list and move on to the next thing on the list, and that's to replace this old rusted out tailgate. So I found one on eBay that was an aftermarket tailgate that was already painted black. Thank goodness I didn't have to paint anything. Only $230 including shipping. After a few days, it arrived in a nice big box, and it was time to unbox this and make sure it wasn't beat up from shipping. This one did arrive with some small dents, but nothing major. I decided to just run it instead of waiting and doing the whole return process and everything, and then getting another tailgate that possibly had a dent. It really wasn't bad, so we decided to send it. So the first step was to remove the old tailgate, and I'm going to start here by removing this cover here on the old tailgate that gives me access to the handle, the latches, and the entire mechanism that opens and closes the tailgate. Now once I got this cover off, I started working on this piece of plastic trim because I know the new tailgate did not come with the one I needed, so I had to remove this one and then install it on the new tailgate once I was done. Now the old trim piece was removed, I started working on the latches on both sides that were just held in by a couple of bolts. It was super easy. I was able to slide the latches out by bending this little metal rod a little bit, and it created enough room that I could slide it out in one piece so I can reinstall it to the new tailgate when ready. Now once the latches were out, it was time to get the actual handle mechanism out. It was only held on by a couple of screws, and everything was really easily accessible with that cover off. Now with all the hardware removed, I needed to take off this back emblem, and that was the last part on the tailgate that needed to be popped out. And once it was popped out, it's time to completely remove this old tailgate from the truck. The next morning I waited for my friend to come over so he could help me line up the new tailgate. Since it was freshly painted and everything, I didn't want to scratch it up or dent it any more than it already was, and together we got this thing fitted in place with zero issues. So now with the new tailgate attached, it was time to slide in the old latches and screw everything up, and everything lined up perfectly to the new tailgate. Thank goodness. I secured them down, and once everything was secured, I went ahead and installed the old handle mechanism from the old tailgate, and then I got that in place, and at that point the tailgate opened and closed perfect. And now all that's left is to reattach the old emblem to the new tailgate, and then reattach the old F-150 badge as well here on the side, and you can see we got a brand new tailgate on this thing. It no longer is flaking off rust every time you open and close it. There's no chunks. It looks perfect. It looks awesome, and I'm super happy with how easy it was too. So we can go ahead and we can cross off replacing the tailgate off the list and move on to the next step. But first, let's jump to our money invested chart and add a few things. So we'll add $20 for the cans of paint and primer, and then $230 for the price of new tailgate. So now let's move to getting all the paint on this thing touched up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on this corner scuff here. Now I noticed most of this scuff is a paint transfer, meaning it was rubbed up against a white car and a minor fender bender or something like that. So the first step in what we're going to do is we're going to use a magic eraser. And yes, the same magic eraser that you just get at any big box store. So with a little work from the magic eraser, I got all these white scuffs worked off. You can see all that's left here is just these deeper scratches. So now it's time to take my little touch-up brush and some touch-up paint. Now to get this paint, I just take a trip to my local auto body supply store. They take the paint code you can find here on the VIN sticker on the door jamb of your vehicle, and you can see here the exterior paint code is UH. So with our bottle of touch-up paint here with a little touch-up brush, I carefully touch up all the deep scratches, and this will also seal the paint, and this little bit of rust here you can see is going to be sealed, and it's not going to start getting rusted really out of control. So the last step to get this scuff to hide as best as I possibly can, I take a can of clear coat and I just put a small coat over it. This clear coat will fill in all the small imperfections on that clear coat that were scratched away, and you can see here this fender is now 10 times better. You can't even really see the scuff if you take a few steps back. Obviously it's not perfect, but we just saved ourselves a couple $100 because the paint place will charge a couple $100 to get this thing looking brand new. And last but not least, I'm going to touch up some of these deep scratches here in the bed of the truck. You can see where the rust is forming out. I want to stop this this rust from getting out of hand and start creating holes in the bed of the truck. I'm going to start here with 100 grit sandpaper and sand it down until I get most of the rust off. Now with most of the rust out of the way, I'm going to wipe it down with some alcohol and a rag again and give it about 30 seconds to fully dry and the alcohol to evaporate off. Now I'm going to hit it with some primer with some rust inhibitor so I can stop the rust from reforming as best as I can. And after that was dry, I used this can from the parts store with the same paint code. You can get this at AutoZone, Advanced Auto Parts, or anything like that. The same paint code I explained earlier, UH. You can see right here on the cap. So it's a perfect match. I put a few coats of paint on it, and after a few more minutes of drying, I finally hit it with some clear coat. It's not perfect, but it looks so much better. And the main reason for this is I want to just make sure the rust is not going to just start getting out of hand and start rusting out holes in the bed. So let's go ahead and cross off fixing the paint off the list and move on to the last thing on the exterior, and that was to restore these headlights, because you can see these things could use a nice refresh. Now you can see what I'm doing here is the last step to restoring your headlights, and lucky for you guys, I have an entire video on the process that I personally use to restore your headlights and get a professional looking result. You can see after me doing one headlight, the difference between the two is completely night and day. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit the second one, and you can see the front end of this truck is looking so much better with these restored headlights. It makes the truck look 5 years newer with just a little bit of effort and some cheap products. So let's go ahead and cross off restoring the headlights off the list. We got the final thing done. Now all we need to do is buff this paint and bring out that beautiful shine that it once had. So what I like to do before I buff any car or truck is I take it to the car wash, and then once I take it home, I go back over it with a huge microfiber rag and again some rubbing alcohol. I want to make sure I get this paint as clean as I can, get all the impurities off the paint before I buff it, because it leaves it with a nicer finish. So I really take my time on this step. I make sure the paint is super clean, and now it's time to buff. So similar to the pads that you saw me use for the headlights, I just use a larger drill attachment and a buffing pad to buff the cars that I flip. I actually use the exact same rubbing compound as well. It's a medium grit rubbing compound, so it's not the final polished stuff that you'll see at the store, but it's also not a heavy cutting compound. It's a good happy medium, and it works great, an all-around compound, if you will. Now you can see here, once I did half this body panel, the reflection of myself is so much more clear on the part that I buffed opposed to where I didn't buff. You can see here it's super hazy, and again, this paint is perfectly clean. It's just still super hazy from sitting in the sun so long. It is a night and day difference. You can see the reflection looks so much better where I buffed, and it gives this thing a nice mirror finish. So I did this for every body panel on the truck, and once it's all said and done, you can really see here this truck looks absolutely incredible. The headlights are nice and shiny. The trim looks like factory brand new trim. The tailgate's brand new. The paint looks as good as it did when it came off the assembly line. There's no noticeable scratches anymore. This truck just really looks super awesome, guys. I'm really happy with how the exterior came out. So let's cross off the final thing off the exterior and move on to getting that interior looking as good as the exterior so we can get this thing sale ready. And obviously, if we're going to get the interior looking as good as the exterior, we can't leave these seats all ripped up like this. So now it's time to take the trip up to the upholstery shop, and we got to remove these seats. So there's 4 bolts in each corner of the seats that hold it in place. I always use an impact gun to remove seats because most of the time these bolts have never been removed. They're pretty hard to get off with just a regular hand ratchet set. So after I zipped all 4 bolts off, it's time to unplug any electrical connectors that are under the seat, and once those are unhooked, I can go ahead and I can pull the seats right out. So now with the seats out, it was time to load them up into my truck and take them over to the upholstery shop. And within a few days, I went and picked them up, and you guys can see here things were all patched up and looking absolutely beautiful. It definitely wasn't a cheap trip. It cost me $350. You can see here on the receipt. Upholstering seats is not an easy task, so I let the professionals do it because they're way better than I am at it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to cross off getting the seats patched up off the list, and the last thing here we're going to do to get these seats looking brand new again is hit them with some leather dye. But first, we're going to jump back to our money invested chart, and we're going to add a few things. We're going to add $50 for the touch-up paint and all the cans of paint that I used to touch up the body and the bed of the truck, and we're also going to go ahead and add $350 that we spent getting these seats reupholstered. So now let's move on to hitting the seats with that leather dye. So you can see here, even though we just got these seats reupholstered, some of them has some like white staining on the backrest. I really have no idea what this is, and the other one has these weird green patches on the backrest. They look pretty worn out, so let's see if we can get these things freshened up and beautiful. So I get my leather dye from a company called seatdoctors.com. All you do is send them your VIN, and they color match your interior with the factory interior color, and they send you the dye. It's super easy. Now, to use leather dye, the first thing you need to do is you need to clean these seats, and what I regularly clean the seats in is, again, rubbing alcohol on a rag. Now, once the seats are all cleaned off and the alcohol is completely dried off, it's time to get the new rag and get a generous amount of that seat dye here on these seats. You don't need to be all fancy with it, just a nice layer, spread it all throughout the entire seat, and then just let it dry. What I do to speed up the process is I hit it with a little heat gun, and then once this is boned bone dry in a few minutes, I hit it with another coat, and we're going to repeat this process till we got 3 or 4 layers on the seat. And now that the final layer of seat dye is completely dry, you can see these green patches on the seat are all gone. Same with those white scratch looking things, and all the other imperfections on this seat, any little ripping or fading is completely gone. These seats look brand new, like factory seats. These things look awesome, and you can see the huge difference of the before and after. I'm super happy with how these seats turned out. So let's go ahead and cross off dyeing the seats off the list and move on to the next thing, and that was the final thing on the to-do list, and that was to give this thing a full thorough detail. So since the seats are already removed, you can see how much easier it is to get in there and deep clean these carpets. But first off, we got to vacuum all these carpets up and get all the junk out. So we're going to start here with the shop vac, and we're going to thoroughly get all this dirt and random stuff that's deeply embedded in these carpets up. I like to take about 15 minutes alone just to vacuum, just to make sure I don't get my carpet cleaner all clogged up with this stuff when we move on to the next step. And now that we're all vacuumed up, I take some cleaner and my little handheld pump sprayer, and I soak the entire carpet with a generous amount of cleaner. And then after we're done spraying, I let it soak for about 5 minutes, and after the 5 minutes up, I use a drill brush attachment to really work the cleaner deep into the fabric of this carpet. You can do this by hand with a regular brush, but the drill brush attachment really speeds up the process. It works out all those stains really well if there is any staining, and once it's worked in, I finish the job here with my carpet cleaner. It sprays clean water in and it sucks out all the dirty, nasty stuff. You can see here there's some nasty stuff coming out of this carpet. This carpet is black, so it really hides all the dirty and gross stains in there. But once this carpet was clean, it smelled absolutely amazing. It was super soft and it was left with a nice fresh car smell. So now that my dude was finishing up the final vacuum, I hit the interior with a microfiber rag and some interior detailing stuff here and got all the remaining dust out of the way, and the final wipe down all done. We got the seats back in the truck, and when it was all said and done, the interior of this truck looks amazing. It was busted up and ugly when I got it, but you can see how amazing this interior really looks. I'm super happy with how it turned out. So now with the interior looking brand new and the exterior all painted and buffed and looking pretty, this thing is finally sale ready and ready to find a new home. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take some really good pictures showcasing how great this truck really looks. Always take your pictures vertically and not horizontally. They will look so much better when potential buyers are looking for a new car on their phone browser. So I'm going to go ahead and post this thing at $12,000. So that's roughly $1,000 under the market value like we looked at before. Now keep in mind, vehicles over $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 usually take a while to sell. Not a lot of people have that cash on hand, so they always just go to a dealership and put that money down for a new vehicle. So I always make sure when I have vehicles over that like $7,000, $8,000 range, I make sure to list them under market value. And obviously the reason I just do this is I don't want to sit on it for months until I get my money back. So after about 3 weeks of sitting on this truck, I finally had someone who was interested in coming to see it. So they came, they looked at it, they drove it around the block, they came back, they looked at me, they looked at the truck, and then they lowballed me at $10,000. Now, as much as I want to just say yes, since this is the first person to even come look at this thing in almost a month, I told them $11,250 is almost $2,000 under market value. That's kind of be the price that I'm really bottomed out at, and you would be crazy to pass thing up because it's in great shape and it's under market value. He tried to get me back to that $10,000 lowball, but I stood firm at $11,250. He ended up shaking my hand. We made a deal at $11,250. So the truck officially has a new home, got this thing out of my driveway, and now it's time to find out how much money we made. So let's jump back to our money invested chart and add a few things. We have $40 for the seat dye. I also paid my friend $100 to help me detail the truck. I'll add another $100 in miscellaneous things like detailing products, the gas I put in the truck, and anything else I might be forgetting. So let's add all this up and it brings us to a grand total of $7,405. And now with the sale price of $11,250 minus the total amount we had invested at $7,405, that gives us a total profit margin of $3,845. That is not bad at all. So now what we're going to do is we're going to break it down a little bit further and see how much I made per hour. So it only took about 15 minutes to change the AC and put the stop leak in, about 3 hours to paint the trim since I had to tape off every piece. Replacing the tailgate only took about 2 hours at most. I say about another 2 hours to touch up the paint and everything. Now we got about an hour in restoring the headlights, another 2 hours to wash and buff the exterior of the truck, another hour and a half to remove the seats, clean them, and dye them. The detailing took the longest at about 4 hours to get everything nice and squeaky clean, and we're going to add another 4 hours of miscellaneous things like dropping off the seats to get reupholstered, part shopping, making the listing, and all little things like that. that. So if we add all that up, it comes out to a total amount of labor invested at 19.75 hours. So now we're going to take the total profit margin of $3,845. We're going to divide it by the labor of 19.75 hours, and that comes out to a grand total of $194 an hour. That is not bad at all, and it is a huge win in my book. Now with YouTube pushing YouTube Shorts so hard, my videos do not get the same love and views they used to. So I'm going to need all the help I can get in order to continue making these car flip videos for you guys. I do all my own repairs, filming, editing, and everything in between. So make sure you guys press the like button on this video, leave a comment for the YouTube algorithm, and also a huge shout out to the SWOOPA app for being the official sponsor of this video. I'm telling you guys, this app is a game changer. I definitely recommend it to anybody who's looking to get into flipping of any kind. Now be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys on the next car flipping video.